There are seasons when heaven seems to take something from us without warning, when the people we thought were permanent begin to fade into memory, when the voices that once echoed beside us grow silent, and it feels as though we are walking through an empty corridor of goodbyes. Yet, in the quiet ache of such moments, there is a whisper from eternity that says, "I removed them, because they couldn't go where I'm taking you." It is not an accusation, not a decree of anger or vengeance, but a statement of divine wisdom. For there are some companions meant only for certain chapters, and if they lingered beyond their appointed time, they would weigh down the wings that were meant to rise. God does not prune to punish, he prunes to prepare. The gardener knows that fruit cannot grow in tangled vines, and so he cuts with precision, shaping the soul for a harvest it cannot yet see. The removal feels cruel when you stand amidst the falling leaves, but in time you understand that he was making room for spring. There are those who can love you deeply and still not understand your calling. They may walk with you faithfully through one valley and still not belong on your next mountain. Their presence, though comforting, would not survive the altitude of where you're going. For destiny demands discipline, and purpose demands purity of alignment. God sees the weight of every bond, and when he removes someone, it is not to leave you lonely, but to leave you ready. He clears the road before he accelerates the traveler. He knows that certain hearts, no matter how well-meaning, cannot bear the light that awaits you. Some would doubt it, some would distort it, some would draw it toward their own shadow. So in mercy, he removes them, not because they are evil, but because they are unfinished for what's next. You may think you are losing stability, but in truth, you are being set free from stagnation. You are being repositioned for revelation. The path of faith is not crowded, it is carved by those who trust enough to walk alone when God calls them forward. The absence of those who once stood beside you is not proof that you have fallen out of favor. It is evidence that you are stepping into sacred territory. The divine hand removes only what would hinder divine purpose. He takes nothing that will serve your destiny. He is not stripping you, he is refining you. The removal is the furnace in which gold is purified, where attachments burn away so that what remains is wholly his. And while you mourn what is gone, heaven celebrates what is being born. Every separation carries a silent sanctification. When he removes, he also reveals. He shows you who you are without the noise of those who once defined you. He teaches you how to stand without their applause, how to listen without their counsel, how to trust without their validation. For where he is taking you, dependence on approval must die. You cannot enter promise still clinging to familiar hands. You cannot cross into destiny, still longing for those who preferred comfort to calling. He removes not only the people who would slow your steps, but also the illusions that would blind your faith. It is not cruelty, it is choreography. The divine rearrangement is exact, intentional, merciful. It hurts because the heart resists being untied from what it has known, but even pain is sacred when it carries the fingerprints of purpose. When you look back, you will see that every removal was timed, every silence strategic, every goodbye ordained. You will realize that nothing was lost that was meant to remain. You will see that God was not taking from you. He was taking you somewhere. You were never being abandoned. You were being advanced. The divine voice that said, "I removed them," was not closing a door in anger, but opening a horizon in love. He saw the destination before you saw the map. He saw the crown before you felt the weight. And though the absence feels like a wound now, one day you will understand that the wound was a window through which the light of destiny first entered your soul. Every removal is an act of mercy disguised as loss. It is the strange kindness of God that often comes wrapped in pain. When we look at what has been taken from us, our first instinct is to grieve, to protest, to ask why the threads of our comfort have been cut so suddenly. We think something has gone wrong, when in truth, something is being made right. There are moments when heaven must interrupt our attachments because we have mistaken them for anchors. We think we need certain people, certain places, certain patterns to survive, yet God knows what would poison the promise if allowed to stay. What we interpret as abandonment is often divine intervention in its gentlest form. He removes not to destroy, but to deliver. His mercy does not always arrive as relief. Sometimes it arrives as removal. Loss, in the eyes of eternity, is never waste. It is a divine translation of mercy that our human hearts cannot yet read. When he takes away what we thought we could not live without, he is not being cruel. He is saving us from futures we cannot yet imagine. Some relationships, though sweet in season, would rot the soul if prolonged. Some opportunities, though glittering, would steal our gratitude if gained too soon. God sees the silent decay beneath what still looks beautiful. He sees the hidden cracks beneath what still stands tall, and in his mercy, he dismantles what would one day collapse on its own. It is the compassion of a surgeon removing what threatens the body, though the patient does not yet see the necessity of the blade. Divine mercy is often misunderstood, because it looks like loss before it looks like life. Sometimes the mercy of God closes a door that our desire is desperate to keep open. We plead, we pray, we persist, but he does not move. The silence of heaven becomes unbearable, and we mistake it for neglect, when in truth, it is protection. He will not let us enter a room that would diminish our light. He will not let us dwell in places too small for the person. He is shaping within us. He loves us too deeply to let us remain surrounded by what limits our becoming. And so, he removes. The mercy of God does not always comfort first. It corrects. It does not always soothe. It sanctifies. It tears before it heals, not to wound us, but to rebuild us stronger than before. When he takes something from your hands, it is only because he sees what your heart was never meant to carry. The loss that feels like betrayal is often the prelude to blessing. The people who walked away were not pushed out by chance. They were released by design. God saw what you could not. He saw conversations you were not meant to hear, motives you were not ready to discern, and destinies that did not align with yours. His mercy steps in when our discernment fails. We hold too tightly to temporary things, and so he must sometimes break our grip to teach us freedom. He lets what is false fall away so that truth can stand. What he removes is never equal to what he replaces. He subtracts to multiply. He clears the field before the harvest. He allows us to walk through the age of loss so that when joy returns, we recognize its worth. Mercy works quietly, beneath the surface of what we can see. But its fruit is eternal. There will come a day when you will look back and thank God for the things you did not get to keep. You will see the faces that left, the doors that closed, the dreams that died, and realize that each one was an act of mercy. He did not take from you, he took care of you. He spared you from battles that were not yours to fight, from burdens that were not yours to bear, from futures that were never written in your name. The mercy of God does not always come as sunlight. Sometimes it comes as shadow. It does not always give answers. Sometimes it gives peace instead. And when you finally see the story from the mountaintop of hindsight, you will understand that what looked like loss was simply love in its most refined and holy form. The journey ahead requires a lighter heart. There are destinations you cannot reach while carrying the weight of what was. The divine road narrows not because you are unworthy, but because the purpose ahead demands purity of focus. Many travelers set out toward promise but collapse beneath the load of memories, regrets, attachments, and fears. God, in his tender discipline, begins to remove what you were never meant to bear beyond a certain point. He loosens the ties to the familiar, not to leave you exposed, but to make you agile for the path that bends toward destiny. The lighter the soul, the higher it can climb. The lighter the heart, the further it can see. When God begins to lift things away, it is not subtraction. It is sanctification. He is teaching you to move not by sight or comfort, but by trust. There are moments when the weight you feel is not from what you carry in your hands, but from what you refuse to release in your spirit. You may hold no physical burden, yet your heart is crowded with the echoes of what used to be. People who left, failures that still whisper, seasons that ended without closure. But the journey of faith does not allow for emotional luggage. To walk with God is to walk unburdened by yesterday. He cannot fill a clenched hand. He cannot guide a soul that insists on turning backward. The path before you was not built for nostalgia. It was built for newness. The manna that sustained you in the wilderness will rot if hoarded in the promised land. Each step forward demands surrender of something behind. The lighter heart learns to thank God for what once was, but it also learns to let go so that joy may flow freely again. A lighter heart is not careless. It is courageous. It trusts that every removal, every silence, every unanswered question serves a divine rhythm beyond understanding. It learns to walk without needing to see the end from the beginning. There is a kind of strength that comes only when you stop wrestling with what God has already settled. The heart becomes lighter when it stops arguing with divine timing. The more you release control, the freer you become. This freedom is not rebellion. It is obedience at its highest form. God is not asking you to forget what hurt you, but to release it from authority over your peace. He is not asking you to pretend it didn't matter, but to trust that He can make it matter differently. Every tear you let go of becomes a seed in the soil of tomorrow's joy. Every weight surrendered becomes wind beneath your next step. Sometimes the lightness God offers comes disguised as loneliness. He will lead you through spaces where no familiar hand reaches out, where no comforting voice calls your name, and it will feel as if you are drifting into emptiness. But in truth, He is teaching you to depend on His voice above all others. The lighter heart does not float without direction. It follows the subtle pull of grace. It listens differently, loves differently, hopes differently. It stops demanding certainty and starts celebrating mystery. You begin to understand that your journey was never about the comfort of company, but about the clarity of calling. The absence of what you thought you needed is the presence of what He always planned. The silence is not abandonment. It is invitation. To hear more, to see more, to become more. You will know your heart has become light when you no longer fear losing what is temporal, because you have tasted what is eternal. The lighter heart no longer measures its worth by who stayed or who left, by what was given or what was taken. It measures by alignment, by how closely it beats with the rhythm of heaven. And in that rhythm, you find rest even while climbing. You find joy even while releasing. The journey ahead does not reward those who cling, it crowns those who trust. So when He removes, when He reshapes, when He redefines, do not resist. The heart that yields becomes the vessel that soars. The heart that lets go becomes the one that arrives. For God's path is narrow not to confine you, but to carry you higher. And only those who travel light will find the strength to keep ascending. Some doors close, because the next ones are holy. Not every closed door is a rejection. Some are revelations of divine timing. There are thresholds you cannot cross with unwashed hands, seasons you cannot enter carrying yesterday's dust. When God closes a door, it is not to cage you. It is to consecrate you. It is His way of drawing a sacred boundary between what was and what will be. The door that will not open no matter how hard you push is not your enemy, it is your protection. Holiness often hides behind hindrance. The pauses, the delays, the denials are not walls to keep you out. They are veils to prepare you within. There are realms of promise that require purification before participation. God closes certain doors so that when the next one opens, you will be ready to stand inside without stumbling. It is in our nature to knock harder when doors refuse to open. We press, we plead, we pray louder, thinking persistence will persuade heaven. But divine doors are not opened by force, they are opened by formation. God's silence is not punishment, it is preparation in disguise. The closed door becomes a classroom where faith learns patience, where pride unlearns its noise, where trust matures beyond impulse. Behind every locked moment, there is a lesson forming character. We often cry out, "Why not now?" And heaven answers quietly, "Because you are still being shaped." For if God were to open some doors too soon, the blessing meant to lift you might instead crush you. The weight of destiny requires strength that delay alone can build. The closed door is not a denial of your worth. It is the furnace of your becoming. Some doors are closed not because of what is inside them, but because of what is still inside you. You cannot carry resentment through a holy threshold. You cannot bring bitterness into a sacred space. God will close every entryway that would allow contamination of his purpose. He is not withholding opportunity. He is protecting purity. He will not let you enter new glory with old grudges. The waiting room between doors is where he scrubs your motives clean, where he separates your calling from your craving. The longer the door stays shut, the more certain you can be that he is doing deep work behind it. You are not being ignored. You are being refined. Every no becomes a mirror showing what still needs surrender. Every pause becomes a prayer you didn't know you needed. When God finally opens the next door, it will not creak. It will swing wide with divine certainty. And you will understand that the waiting, the weeping, the wondering were all sacred preparations. You will step through not as the same person who knocked, but as one remade by patience. The closed door taught you to value what is holy, to discern what is real, to resist what is easy. It taught you to see opportunity not as reward, but as responsibility. You will realize that the doors you tried to open by your own strength were too small for the version of you he was building. You would have settled for ordinary, but he was shaping you for extraordinary. Every shut entrance was a silent announcement that heaven had reserved something greater. Holiness is never hurried. When the next door opens, it will require your whole heart, not just your desire. It will demand humility, gratitude, and faith that has been tested by silence. You will walk through it and sense a stillness different from any you've known. The quiet hour of being where you were always meant to be. The air of new beginnings always smells of obedience. The rooms God opens for you will not resemble the ones you prayed for. They will be larger, clearer, truer. And in that moment, you will thank him for every closed door, for every unanswered plea, for every detour that kept you pure enough to touch what is holy. You will see that the closing was not cruelty but cleansing, that the delay was not denial but divine choreography. Arranging your soul for the threshold where glory begins. Divine direction demands sacred solitude. There are paths where the crowd cannot walk beside you, not because they are unworthy, but because destiny is often a narrow road meant for one set of footprints at a time. When God begins to speak deeply, he draws his chosen ones into stillness. He removes distractions that once made them feel secure. He allows the familiar voices to fade, so that his whisper becomes unmistakable. This solitude is not abandonment. It is appointment. In the silence, he begins to tune your heart to the frequency of heaven. He separates you from noise not to punish you, but to prepare you for clarity. Every great turning point in a divine story begins in aloneness. The wilderness is not empty, it is sacred. It is the place where God teaches you who you are without the echo of others' opinions. There is a peculiar ache that comes when God calls you apart. You watch as others run ahead, celebrate, connect, and belong, while you are left in a quiet space where nothing seems to move. The temptation is to believe that you have been forgotten, but solitude is never a sign of divine neglect. It is the workshop of revelation. In sacred solitude, you learn to hear what cannot be heard in noise. You begin to discern not only his voice, but also your own motives. You learn the difference between divine calling and human ambition, between waiting in faith and waiting in fear. God uses solitude to unmask the parts of you that depend on validation. He dismantles the idols you built from approval and applause. When all is stripped away, what remains is truth, and truth is the foundation of direction. Before God trusts you with the next assignment, he ensures that your compass is not swayed by the crowd. Solitude sharpens spiritual sight. When others are chasing movement, you are being taught stillness. When others seek platforms, you are learning posture, how to kneel before the unseen hand that guides you. The path to divine direction is hidden in the quiet obedience no one celebrates. The world calls it isolation, but heaven calls it intimacy. There, in the quiet, you begin to recognize that every pause is purposeful, that every delay carries design. You start to see that being set apart is not rejection, it is refinement. The solitude that once felt suffocating becomes sacred when you realize that it is where God teaches you to walk by revelation instead of routine. You learn to move when He moves and to stand when He stands still. You learn that the presence of God is better than the presence of people. There are seasons when God will remove even good things to preserve great things. The noise of companionship, though comforting, can cloud the sound of divine direction. He will silence what competes for your attention, so that His guidance can grow louder than your confusion. He will call you to sit in rooms that feel empty until you realize they are full of His presence. He will hide you from the public eye so that He can show you something private. It is in these unseen seasons that faith matures, that character deepens, that vision clarifies. The solitude you resist now will one day become the sanctuary you return to. For when you walk long enough with God, you discover that solitude is not the absence of company. It is the fullness of communion. It is the place where your destiny stops being theory and starts becoming truth. When the time comes to move again, the one who has been forged in solitude walks differently. There is a quiet authority, a peace that does not depend on outcomes, a direction that does not waver with opinions. You begin to lead not from noise but from knowing. You carry a stillness that commands storms to rest. You no longer seek validation, because you have heard the voice that matters most. The sacred solitude has done its holy work. It has stripped you of distraction and filled you with discernment. So when God says, "Go," you move not with anxiety, but with assurance. You have learned the art of following the invisible compass of grace. And though the world may see your aloneness as loss, heaven knows it was the making of you. For only those who have walked with God in silence can speak with power when He sends them into the noise. The promise needs pruning before it blooms. Every seed of destiny carries both beauty and burden, and before it can rise into the fullness of its design, it must first be refined beneath the soil. Pruning is not punishment, it is preparation. God trims away what cannot bear the weight of the promise, what would steal nourishment from the roots of purpose, what would blossom too soon and break under its own beauty. The divine gardener cuts not to wound, but to shape. It is the kindness of His blade that keeps your future from collapsing under premature fruit. Every cutting is measured, every removal intentional. He knows exactly what to take, when to take it, and how much you can endure. The shears of heaven are guided by love, even when they draw tears. For every promise, before it blooms in public, must be pruned in private. There are seasons when you feel the pain of being stripped bare, when every branch you thought was flourishing begins to fall away. You watch as opportunities fade, relationships shift, and old dreams lose their color. It feels like loss, but in truth, it is alignment. The vine that grows wild bears scattered fruit, the vine that is pruned bears lasting harvest. God removes not because you are barren, but because He sees potential for greater fruitfulness. He is not cutting you down, He is cutting you back. The promise is too precious to grow among distractions. So He prunes your priorities, your circle, even your desires, until what remains is pure and productive. The pain of pruning is often the proof of proximity. He only trims what He tends closely. The very act of being cut means you are under His care. Pruning exposes what prosperity hides. When everything is blooming, it is easy to believe that growth equals maturity, but unpruned growth is often unstable. God knows that a promise built on pride cannot last, so He prunes to teach dependence, to remind you that fruit without roots is fleeting. The pruning season is humbling, because it reveals how much of your identity was tied to what you produced. It teaches you that value is not measured in visible branches but in unseen roots. While you mourn what was lost, heaven rejoices in what is being secured. For when God prunes, He is not reducing your life, He is concentrating its power. The smaller the surface, the deeper the strength. The less you carry outwardly, the more capacity He builds within. The pruning of promise is the slow crafting of permanence, Many flee the pruning season because it feels like failure. The world will call you forgotten, stripped, diminished. Yet it is in these hidden intervals that the most sacred transformation occurs. God will not let you skip the silent years, because the bloom without depth cannot withstand wind. He will not let you bear fruit before you can bear weight. He will teach you to rest in obscurity, to trust his timing more than your visibility. You may see nothing changing above the soil, but beneath it, roots are weaving strength into your soul. Every unseen moment is a rehearsal for revelation. You are not being reduced. You are being readied. The pain is proof that your promise is alive, that something in you is being refined for endurance. The hands that cut are the same hands that will crown. When the pruning is complete, the promise will bloom not out of effort, but out of surrender. You will rise lighter, purer, stronger, no longer attached to what was unnecessary. What once looked like loss will now look like wisdom. You will understand that God did not take from you, he shaped you. He did not end your story, he edited it for glory. The branches that were removed made room for abundance. The roots that deepened in darkness prepared you for the brightness of harvest. When your season of blooming comes, it will be undeniable. Not fragile, not fleeting, but firm. And in that moment, you will no longer question the pruning, because you will see the purpose in every cut. You will recognize that every pain was prophetic, every tear was water for your soil, and every silence was the sound of God, making you ready for the promise to finally bloom.